Definitely, and music is making you more intelligent. I think I will put it this way: music is the victory. The fact that you're learning music means that you're already getting a bone vita boost to your intelligence, and that's the reward. I mean, anything more, if you're getting awards and rewards and performances, that's an extra, that's a bonus. Don't go with that expectation. Learn music because music by itself is your biggest achievement, right? It's already made you a better human being, right? It's given you more intelligence. It's made your brain synthesize much faster than other people can. That's it. That's your reward.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Luminary Lounge, where we explore insights from lives well lived. I am Murali, your host today, and I'm especially excited today because we are diving into the world of music, a language that speaks to the soul. And I'm delighted today to have a truly inspiring guest on our show, Mr. Anil Srinivasan. Born in Chennai, he grew up surrounded by the rich traditions of Carnatic classical music, while also beginning his journey into Western classical piano from the age of 3. He later went on to the US to do his further studies, where he did an MBA from the University of Southern California and an MPhil from the Columbia Business School. Anil is a popular speaker, a columnist for a wide variety of publications. He is not just a pianist. He has definitely shared the stage with legends worldwide. But in addition to being a pianist, he is a visionary educator and a social entrepreneur. Through his Rhapsody Music Foundation, he has transformed the lives of over 4 lakh children across South India, making music education accessible to all. Recognized with the prestigious honors like the Kalaimamani Award and the Sangeeta Natak Academy Yuva Puraskar, Anil is redefining the role of music in society. So, prepare yourself for a journey which includes not just music, but a man with a mission. Anil, welcome to Luminary Lounge. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. Murali. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with your career. You always had music in the background, but then you did, your MBA, you did your MPhil. But what was that moment that made you shift your focus from being a musician in the background to later being an educationist and now also a social entrepreneur?
Thank you, Dr. Murali. The truth is that I always consider myself an accidental performer, not a intentional performer. Music, as you had very rightly said in the introduction, was always a part of my life. But I never thought that I would become a performer. I might have had childhood dreams of wanting to be on stage, but I don't think I myself was that committed to being a performer. As much as keeping music, very much at the center stage of everything I do. It never struck me as something that I should deep focus on specifically for itself. I always took it for granted that music will always be there. There'll always be a piano wherever I go. So, it's that kind of thinking. Having said that, I think there comes a time in most of our lives where you want to look at some central core truth, right? Central core idea, philosophy, truth, whatever you want to call it, around which the rest of our lives evolve, right? So at some level for you, I'm sure medicine was your calling, right? So, and I think for me, it took, going to the US, studying, doing lots of other things before I realized that music, more than just being a performer, music needs to be central to everything that I do, right? So, and that does not have to restrict itself only to performance. It can manifest as education, it can manifest as, charity, it can manifest in multiple ways. But like He-Man says in the Masters of the Universe, somewhere you discover I have the power, right? So there's some, I would call it a gift and it's a great gift that I'm very grateful for. That somewhere the divine providence decided to bestow an ability to render music, and I always felt very strongly right from the moment I decided that music needs to be the central truth of my life. I said I need to put it at the service of other things that can come about. So I think education was a natural transition because uh, having music in my life has made me a very different learner. Okay, so when I say different learner, I even when I was in school, I used to keep my textbooks in front of me while I was practicing piano, and I'll be reading history or geography, but I'll be playing something else. And other people used to find it freakish or strange, but I realized that how much of tune making, right? So I used to make up tunes about Vasco da Gama, and I used to make up tunes about the Southwest monsoons, as I used to study, and it has made me a very different learner. I started having retention and concentration in a slightly different way than if music had not been there. So I was my first test subject, and putting that into research terminology when I was in Colombia and I was working on somewhere the intersection of neuroscience and music, I think it's very profound to see how much music changes the way we receive information, we synthesize information, we memorize information, and how we use it. So I think that's where the shift to education happened. And everything else, whether it's Rhapsody or whatever I'm doing in terms of teaching and bringing this way of using music to make education better, I think it's all come from that. It's come from that central philosophy.
I think we will dive deeper into each aspect of it as we, go through our conversation. But I think there are a lot of points here that comes to my mind. One is Paulo Coelho's book Alchemist, right? He travels all around the world and comes back to where he is. And secondly, the mention of learning through music. I think that's something extremely exciting because the neurosciences are also looking at that. And the amount of social impact you had, I think we'll dive deeper into that. But I think I'm sure the listeners will be very eager to listen to another aspect of your life, which is having collaborated with some incredible musicians. I mean to say, you have performed with the top musicians in the world. Can you share a particular memorable experience or a key lesson, as you might have learned in your younger days from a musician, which has shaped your life later?
I will talk about Mandolin Srinivas and Anna to me, and somebody I've known since I was 19 or 20 years old. I am very lucky that I got the chance to learn by just being around him, working with him, collaborating with him, recording on multiple efforts of his. There was, I think working with Anna is probably the closest I would say in my life coming in touch with divinity living in our midst. And I don't say it only in this gaga goo goo spiritual way. I'm just saying it as I've lived it, right? So I can say that if you sat next to him in a studio when he was playing, and you're within 3-4 feet of him, you'll realize that there's something otherworldly which is taking place. He's not even aware. He's not even conscious about what he's playing. Right? Something is just flowing through him, and all you see on his face is one very beatific smile, and so much of grace. But it's something that doesn't. It's very difficult to describe, put it in words. It's not coming into structure. It's coming from some other source, and that experience I've had, and I think just being around him has made me realize how much of our lives we owe to the presence of art forms like music, right? The every time I've had a problem, I used to have, I frequently get into arguments with fellow musicians, other people I'm dealing with. I always think of myself as somebody who wants to do too many things in too short a time, and therefore I'm always in a hurry, and therefore always get into arguments with people, right? Because it's always about like, holding people and shaking them and saying, how are you not seeing what I'm seeing, right? We need to do it this way, and that doesn't make you very popular, but it makes me very passionate about what I do. And I frequently used to take some of these arguments to Anna, and I'll say, Anna so and so said this. I got into this argument. What do you feel? What should I say? And his only response to almost all of that would be, practice panniyacha. Have you practiced? Right? Um, Even when there were complicated situations that I've taken into, his only response to me would be, practice panniyacha. Have you practiced? Right? Single minded focus to what you need to be doing. Right? Just cut everything else out, like noise cancellation. Just noise cancel everything else, focus on what you need to do. Right? So that, and I've seen him at it. He's a karma yogi in that sense. I've seen him work that way. Right? I mean, particular situations with him, there's so many. I think Dr. Murali, I was talking to you recently and I was telling you about how he used to play very complicated phrases and he just looks
Yes,
at you
yes.
with a merry twinkle in his eye and he'll say, okay, it's your turn now. And one such situation was with, a gallery of musicians present when I recorded on his album Samjanita in 2007. And that's 18 years ago. And everybody was in the room. Shivamani was in the room, and John McLaughlin was in the room. And he's playing this complicated thing on which I'm supposed to play. And he just played it once, and then he said, Ippo, your turn, right? You play. And I literally had my heart in my mouth because the whole gallery is watching, and I don't want to be the weakest link in the room, right? And somehow I managed to play it. It was a complicated pattern in 11 rhythm. And at the end of it, it's not like he came to me and said, "Oh, Ramanana, it's fantastic what you did." Nobody said anything. So the 18 years ago, I was even more a person in need of a pat on the back, and so I went to
Recognition. Yeah,
him
yeah.
and I said, "Anna, did I play well? You didn't say anything." And his only response was, "Nalikku practice panniyacha. Have you practiced for tomorrow?" Right. So somewhere, like you learn by absorption
That is true. That is
these
true.
these things.
Now, you have a piano or the keyboard in front of you, and as we had discussed, this is going to be a very special episode, which is a musical podcast. So, in tribute to
Srinivas.
the great Srinivas, can you just play a piece that he would have loved to listen to? Because many people might not know that he's not with us, and we lost somebody who was so talented, so young. So, I think as a tribute, can you just play something?
Yeah, I don't even know which one to pick, but I'll play Lotus Feet, which is a composition that he played on with John McLaughlin in the Shakti albums and very much on tour. So
That was lovely. So, moving ahead to something much more deeper, I always think that if any question is answered through evolution, then probably that's one of the best answers that we can get. So, coming to music, what evolutionary advantage do you think music gave us? with regards to ancestors, and why do we love music? I mean to say, it's across the entire human race, right? From the tribals in the remotest corners in the world to the most advanced, theaters in the world. All of us love music.
That's like asking me to write 15 books in one answer. But I'll simplify it as much as I can. So imagine, let's say it's hot summer and you see a swimming pool or a pool of water or a lake, and it's super hot, it's sweltering, and you're sweating. You see this beautiful pool of water and you jump into that pool of water, right? And the water is refreshingly cool. How would you respond, right? Your whole body is luxuriating in that experience, right? That is what music is actually doing to your brain. Literally, it is the cold pool of water on a hot summer's day. What it is doing is that music, when the brain is receiving music as input, the brain is at its most active, right? It's literally, the differential, in the brain's capacity to synthesize input. The differential is something like 1:10,000 when you compare the brain's response to text or speech versus your brain responding to music, right? So different parts of the brain are being activated simultaneously because music activates not just your prefrontal cortex or your orbitofrontal cortex, but it's activating different parts, each part dealing with different things. So it's definitely a huge vitamin boost to the hippocampus. So it's releasing memories. It's going to your amygdala, which is relating to decision making, logic,
Emotions.
right, and unlocking your emotion, your prefrontal cortex, which is receiving structure, patterns. So what's happening is that everything is happening all at once, right? So if I were to play, the brain is automatically computing and giving you. I don't even
Yes.
have to give you a manual or a set of instructions to say complete the following, right? Your brain
No.
automatically completes this, right?
Yeah.
And it's doing it because it's retrieving memory, it's retrieving pattern, it's retrieving structure because it knows the structure. And no matter how fast or slow I play, for example, if I did, your brain will automatically do. It knows how to do it in exactly the same speed at which the input is being given, right?
And you don't know. There's another thing that's happening. I'm remembering my school friends as well.
There you go. That's memory, right? So it will also trigger lots of different parts of your memory. But the point is, it's performing the role of a supercomputer within microseconds, right? It's because of that. If I said something to you in text, right, or if I, for example, you're a medicine man, and if I ask you to quote the Hippocrates Oath word to word, it's not that easy, right? Even though you live by it, it's not that easy. You're not. It's text. It's verbal. You're not going to remember it quite so much.
Yeah.
So it's as I said, just imagine that you're being plunged into a lovely, refreshing, cool pool of water on a hot summer's day. What your body is luxuriating. That's what the brain is being given a spa. It's given this, full body massage is happening to the brain, which is why you automatically love it. Because contrary to what a lot of my fellow students and some of my own students think, your brain is actually happiest when it's being used, not when it's being unused, right? So just as the body, why are we asking people to exercise? We ask them to exercise because
That's true.
it's releasing certain endorphins, right? It's actually releasing your happy hormones, right?
Yes.
So similarly, when the brain is being activated at this extent, right, it's releasing that part of your that part of chemical that is keeping you very happy. So there's actually a neurophysiological reason as to why music is making you happy. It's not just because it's a nice thing, right? And physiologically, neurologically, it's occupying so much of your brain, activating so much of your brain, even when you're not trying to, right? All I have to do, for example, doctor, you grew up in South India, right? So if I did for example, I mean, you can sing it in your head, right? If you were, did you speak Kannada growing up, doctor, or do you speak Kannada?
Yes. Telugu, Kannada, and also
Telugu,
the
Kannada,
Tamil.
right?
Right? Yeah.
If I did, right, you automatically not only know the song, I'm sure your brain is going, "Naguva Nayana." It's automatically doing that.
Yes.
But it's not just that, right? You're thinking of Bangalore in the 1980s, you're thinking of
Yes.
MG Road, you're thinking of Anil Kapoor, you're thinking of that actress who acted only in that one film and then went away.
And no traffic. And no traffic.
More traffic. And automatically the nodes that are getting connected via that
Yes.
is plenty for us, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure if I went back to the 1980s and quoted to you from your physics textbook, your memories are not going to be the same. Your associations
true.
are not the same, right? So
So
it's physiological.
yeah. So do you think let's talk about again evolution. The ancestors had some link with memory that they would probably sing songs about where to find the fruits or where to kind
It
of
is where it's where music comes from, right? That we started
yeah.
inventing sounds of different frequencies to mimic certain things. You would mimic bird calls, you would mimic the roar of a lion, you will mimic fire as a sound, right? And
Yeah.
which is why evolutionary physiology, evolutionary neurology, if you look at it, the brain automatically responds. See, for example, um, your mother's voice, right? You don't need to know the call-in number, even if your mother is calling you from a different number.
That's true.
With that hello, you will know who exactly that is, right?
Yes.
Because it's evolutionary, right? It's your brain is trained to respond to that voice since before you were born, right?
Yeah.
So you can't help it. If Amma is calling you from a totally different PCO booth also, you'll recognize her voice, right?
That is true.
That's the way it works for everybody.
And are there any nature sounds that, as a musician, you find it particularly inspiring, or at the same time difficult to replicate?
Nature is difficult to replicate, and
I agree.
all natural sounds are beautiful, right? Whatever the sounds may be. எனக்கு வந்து one of my favorite thing is in this Kalki Krishnamurthy composition. I'll use that as an example. பூங்குயில் கூவும் பூஞ்சோலையில் ஒரு நாள். So it's that in the beautiful flower orchard, one day, where the cuckoo sang, right?
Yeah.
That is where Lord Muruga appears, and he changed my life. That's the whole poem. Punguil Koom Punjolayil. So for me, and since it's set in Kapi, right? The composition is so that for me, I always in my mind I'll be doing so. And I think to myself that is how probably the cuckoo is sounding. Western classical music is full of examples. Like there's a composition similarly called Le Cuckoo, and it is from the late 17th century, and it's by a French composer, and it's basically. Just the cuckoo. That's the composition, and that's also a cuckoo, right? So throughout time, people will keep trying to mimic this, and it finds its way in so many things, doctor. I mean, like that's where man. You talk about evolution. Man took inspiration from nature, was mimicking nature, and nature sounds formed our first idea of note divisions and how we started structuring notes around it. And this magic of the last 1,500 years of how it's evolved into the system of ragas, the system of scales, the system of symphonic forms. It's magic. It's just magic. It's bigger
It is
magic than
magic. It
anything
is.
Harry Potter can do.
The other question that I normally ask myself is, we are all fortunate to be able to appreciate music. We are fortunate to be able to see great things around us. But there are people who are not that fortunate, right? There are people who are born deaf or they lose their hearing. There are people who cannot see. Now, music, as it's something which is perceived by one of the important senses, if somebody is deaf, you have worked with a lot of specially able children, and I'm sure you've come across this question yourself. How does somebody who is deaf perceive music?
So there are degrees in deafness, the degrees in being orally impaired. If you're at partial levels of inability to hear, differences in frequency and specifically rhythm, and when you bring them close to percussive instruments, etc., it speaks to them. It has similar effect on them like you and I are listening to music. But if you're completely deaf, if you're completely devoid of hearing, it is still very difficult. We still are not complete in our research on how to make music speak to people who are completely orally impaired. It is been proven through research that they are able to perceive that music and the creation and production of music is different from speech. Right? They're able to
Okay.
see that, especially singing, because you can keep their hands, for example, very close to the mouth of the person who's singing, and your body is still receiving sensory input, which is different. But it is obviously not going to be the same as somebody who's got the perfect ability to listen, right? So, whereas when it comes to other disabilities or differential ability, uh, people who are visually impaired, music has an even more profound effect on them than it does on you and me, right? So, music unlocks a very, very different sense for even things like the imagination of color, right? So,
Okay. Yeah.
there are studies in synesthesia, for example. There are studies in looking at how visual impairment, obviously, because you're visually impaired, your other senses are quite heightened because that is how
Yeah. Yeah.
compensation works.
Yeah.
And you are able to listen even to certain micro frequencies that normal people are not listening to.
Okay.
And then when you're asked to visually represent it, right, the way they are able to. So I had a 13-year-old child who worked with us who was visually impaired, and we played a piece of music, and then we asked her to produce a painting out of that. And
Okay.
I wish I had it here to show you, but the bold use of color is very, very different, right? What they
Okay.
imagine blue to be, what they
Yeah.
imagine green to be, right? So
Yeah.
um, it's profoundly humbling actually to work with differential ability because you keep learning more and more about the incredibleness of human capacity.
Just to touch upon the same aspect of, let's take cognition. Now, you have worked in neurocognitive sciences, you did your MPhil in that. So, there's a lot of research coming out, especially when it comes to dementia and how dementia can be prevented by the right type of music. So, can you speak a little bit about your work, what you've done on this cognitive side of the music, emotional side, emotional well being? Because we do see a lot of emotion related issues in the society now. People having depression, people having anxiety. So, can you just talk a little bit about it and probably give an example through your music as to what might be a solution to these issues?
I think, my work is only probably anecdotal, it's not empirical. I haven't really been a researcher specifically in neurocognition with respect to mental health, right? But I can only tell you from anecdotal experience what I have seen it do, and of course what one reads. But see, at one of the primary things that music does is be able to fill patterns, right? So, like when I played Twinkle Twinkle and you were able to get the
Yeah,
second line. So,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
what it's doing is it's giving the brain a sense of purpose. It's giving brain direction, right? So,
Okay.
let us say that you are roaming around in a desert, right? And you've lost your compass and you don't know where you're going. And then suddenly you see in the distance, you see just a splash of red. What would you do? Typically, what you'll do is you'll walk towards it, right? Because you want direction, right? So instead of wandering aimlessly, you assume that that red must be a cloth or a tent or maybe a camel or something, and you're saying, okay, let me go towards other human life or other life, right? So that I can find some anchoring, some mooring. So imagine that if your brain is having an inability to process information, structure, data in a way that is making sense to you, right? And suddenly somebody is coming and beaming one small shiver of light, you start walking towards it. Music does that, right? Because like I gave you Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, if I give you something as a stimulus, automatically the brain, and this is the part that has been scientifically proven, right? So the brain, even when otherwise impaired, can automatically respond to music, right? Even if you have amnesia, brain can still function independently with respect to music because of the connectivity it's having at different parts of the brain. So it automatically uses that music as an anchor to start going towards structure, right? And to that extent, right, obviously it means that if my brain is wandering aimlessly, it's suddenly giving me directionality and it's giving me some meaning, right? And now you can extrapolate it to every other thing that you said, right?
So can you just play something
I put it in a super simplistic fashion, right? As I did give a disclaimer that I'm not a neurocognition person with respect to mental health, but I can, having worked with people going through this and looking at what music is doing to them, right? The ability of joy that it is able to generate, at the ability to recognize patterns, to find direction, right? So I'll give you an example, right?
So because I've been moved by a lot of different, especially the English music, right? You heard the Forrest Gump, Alan Silvestri's composition, which is actually my ringtone, by the way, and also some of the Chopin or Beethoven or Mozart pieces. Each will, I think, bring about a different emotion within you. Right?
I mean, and that's a huge topic, Dr. Murali, because
yes, I know. I'm not going into that, but if you were to just play a piece for somebody who is feeling a little low, what would you play?
This is the first prelude in C major by Bach from the 48 Preludes and Fugues, and there's a reason that I chose it. It's beautiful, but it's also that every note pattern is set in the golden proportion, right?
Yes.
The golden ratio.
And, 1/3, 2/3. Yeah.
And what it does is, it introduces the pattern, so the pattern registers on your brain, and then it takes you into a expanse. increases the expanse.
Yeah.
And slowly broadens. It goes to, then it goes to something broader. So what it's doing is, it's like somebody reaches you, takes you by the hand, slowly takes you into a much larger garden with so many flowers to explore. Each of the flowers being perfect in themselves, and you are surrounded by each flower representing a different note pattern, and suddenly you're swimming in a garden full of possibilities. That's what it does.
Is this what is called as looping?
This is not what is called looping.
This is not as called. Okay.
This
We'll
is not
come to
looping.
that.
Yeah,
We'll
this is
come to
not
that because
looping.
that's
This I'm working purely on treating you neurophysiologically or neurologically to be able to go from lack of pattern, to go from lack of structural predictability to structural predictability, from lack of being able to make sense of things to somewhat being able to make sense of things, right? So giving you that sense that illusion of control, right? So everything to do with mental health is how do you bring about that illusion of control? You and I both know at a philosophical level, we've been brought up to believe that there really is no control, that we are being controlled by a destiny outside of us, which is true. But the only thing that you can equate to what one of the factors that affects happiness is your ability or your illusion that you can control events, that you can control your life. And so when playing Bach in the structured golden ratio pattern of notes, it takes you from, at least it's always taken me from lack of control to control, right? It's tremendously controlled, right?
That's
I can
wonderful.
tell you as a performer that to play Bach, right? So Bach is perfect, right? In the sense, no note receives more emphasis than the other. So if you listen to Chopin and all of the other composers you mentioned, or all the Romantic era and beyond, there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of drama in it, right? So like Chopin, right? Adalalam, there's so much of emotion coming into it, right?
Yes,
because
that's true. That's true.
If I do all of that, one note is getting more importance than the other. Okay.
Yeah.
When I do. So some notes are long, some notes are short, some notes are high. So there's a lot of drama. In Bach, every note is controlled. So think about it as a scientist, doctor. So you're controlling all other variables. You are keeping the only variable that is shifting is the note pattern itself. Emotion is kept constant.
Expanding. Yes.
Right? Emotion is kept constant, color is kept constant, michadella constant, only this. So if I were dealing only with structure and looking at how structure is affecting brain structure, Bach would be the perfect example, which is why I use that as an example for you.
Wonderful. In fact, the example of what you told about somebody leading you to a garden with different flowers, and that was the first time I heard it, and that was amazing. But again, on the same note, if we are wanting to practice mindfulness, meditation, there are so many guided, especially on YouTube, there are so many ones which come out with very peaceful notes. Does it really work? Is it helpful to cultivate mindfulness? That was my question.
Is it helpful to cultivate mindfulness? Absolutely. And music itself as a discipline teaches you that, because going back to what Srinivas was saying, practice panniyacha, right? It's sort of keeping yourself very grounded to something. I see, sometimes I play some of these meditation tracks on YouTube. They're quite random. I don't think people are applying so much thought and, structural, delicacy in choosing the kind of music that they're putting. Does music help mindfulness? Obviously, because when we play the tanpura, right, that itself is to me the greatest practice in mindfulness that you can. In fact, if nothing, go to YouTube, just give tanpura, whatever swara, play D, and just have it playing. That's enough. You don't need music. You just need those 4 note frequencies constantly being played. It sort of, as I said, it brings you, instead of wandering in a desert, it becomes that splash of red that brings you into a slightly less amount of space. It's like something we all do in yoga when we do mindful meditation. We always like to visualize whatever problems we think we are facing and then say, okay, just take a little bit of it
One
and
by
see how
one.
you
Yeah.
can compartmentalize it and handle it one by
Yes.
one and then breathe it
Yeah.
out, right? That's what we're
Yeah.
doing in
Yeah.
pranayama. When we do it, we're doing all of that. So it's like that. So music is allowing you to impose structure automatically without using words. It's allowing you to make the uncontrolled, bring it into a controlled experiment, right? So that you feel, again, I'm going back to illusion of control, that you feel that you can sort of, now I can tackle it. It doesn't seem so burdensome anymore, right?
That's
That
true. That's true.
it's giving shape and form to this room of worries that I can now handle it, as opposed to it seeming like it's occupying an entire ocean, right? So that's what music does.
What about studying? Now, there are a lot of students who listen to our podcast, and definitely, I was one of them who used to listen to music and study. And my mom used to always say, "What are you studying? You're always listening to music." So, if somebody were to be, studying, hard for their competitive exams or anything, is there any advice that you would like to give? Because
Please
again,
keep
YouTube
listening
has
to
got.
music.
Please keep listening to music. But again, is there anything specific or is it individual? Like everybody likes a different flavor.
Instrumental music has, but each person can choose whatever they want. But I'll tell you why. Music helps you make connections between different things, even when the music itself is not connected to what you're studying. So, right, so it can help you because think of music as a super glue which is holding different strands of information together as one lubricated unit, right? So what happens is music itself becomes the mnemonic through which you can remember stuff, right?
Okay.
So for me, because I was listening to so much of this group called Enigma when I was in the 12th standard and I was studying for my public exams, I remember most of my microeconomics automatically Prasanna Vadana will be playing in my head, and when I'm thinking about certain things. So music has actually become like a lubricant. So if fact 1, fact 2, fact 3, music has provided the glue that's bringing all these facts together. So it has that subconscious effect on the brain, and this is research backed. I'm not just making this up, right? So, and to each person their taste, but instrumental music always has that effect because it's not interfering with your perception of syntax. What's happening is that, right? So if syntax is also entering your brain, then it can cause a little bit of confusion. I mean, this is pretty much at the basis of what we do at Rhapsody, Dr. Murali. So how can
you just tell us a little bit? Yeah, because that was my next question as you're talking. That can you tell us a little bit about your foundation and how it started and what you're doing now?
So I mean, my PhD research was looking at this. Was looking at how can music improve learning outcomes, right? So how do people perceive music as, for example, see structurally, if I just play this, sorry. It's a set of ascending notes.
Yes.
In your mind, is it possible for me to therefore implant the idea of a staircase going upwards?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now.
Yes. Coming down.
You're coming down a staircase?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And if I do.
You're skipping.
The idea of a spiral staircase in your brain. So what's happening is that even without actually saying it, your brain is automatically constructing these as structures, right? It's now, if I were to take that structure and instead of teaching odd numbers as 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, can I teach it as notes, right? Or even numbers as. Okay, now let's have one phrase of odd numbers followed by one phrase of even numbers. So instead of having students learn it as 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8, if I can actually start making it as notes, it's not so much about, oh, they don't know it's 1, 3, 5, and 7. It's about the fact that structurally what an odd number means and what an even number means at the age of 4 or 5 is getting very firmly supplanted in the brain, right? It's
okay.
You're laying down the foundations for how structurally as well as logically
numbers you're building a mental model for that kid.
for lots of things, right? So
Yes, yes.
அதே மாதிரி if I were to have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 and I use this to construct 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. So if I do that, I can actually use that to teach tables, for example, right? I can do 2s going into 4s going into, so I'm actually teaching a geometric ratio, but I can use it just using rhythm, right? So same twinkle twinkle example. So I do 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, right? Or I do
Yeah.
right? I'm again using that, like you said, the mental model for multiplication, right? So this is at a very fundamental level. But now if I can start using songs to explain concepts, right? So instead of saying, take the concept of a triangle. Triangle has got 3 points, 3 sides, right? So I take 3 points, and point 1 and point 2 are connected, point 2 and point 3 are connected, point 3 and point 1 are connected, right? So now if I put words into it, this is a triangle, this is a triangle, this is a rectangle, it has 4 sides. I can slowly start taking you from notes to forming. Either even in the classroom, let's say one group of children stand at point 1, point 2 and point 3 and they're singing the song as they're moving from the 3 points together. Imagine how much richness you're creating to the perception of what a triangle means. After that, you tell a child to recognize triangles anywhere in nature, he's set for life. Okay,
That is true.
because
That is true.
your brain has gotten activated, it's formed structures. So I'm giving basic examples, but now to extrapolate it all the way up to middle school, there's so many different ways in which music can be put at the service of learning, not the other way around, right? See, again, our understanding is music in a classroom now we must teach bhajans. No, right? That is putting learning at the service of music. Because for example, if I took even a very elementary, I won't say elementary, let's say a simple Carnatic music composition, let's say
Varavina or something which is which they
something
teach in the
everybody
initial
will-
phases.
Ra
Yeah.
Ravenu Gopala Rajita Sarguna Jayashila. So in that, pa 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 re 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 ga pa ma ga re sa ni da sa ma ga re ga pa da pa da re sa ga re sa ni da ba ma ga re sa re ga pa. So something like that. What is happening is it's all fractional notes, no? Pa 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 re 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 ga pa ma ga re sa ni da sa. So it's all 1/4 notes that are happening within the beat. Now, what is the age at which we learn fractions? We learn fractions usually around 3rd or 4th grade. Okay, so if I teach Ra Ravenu to an LKG kid, you're basically giving him an abstract concept which doesn't make mathematical sense. So you have to question yourself whether you're doing the right thing or not, right? Because Adveriko, you've been saying 1 2 3 1 2 3. Suddenly you're doing 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 1 2 3 4 5. How will you understand what that means, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be age graded, right? Number one. Second thing is those concepts, right? Ra Ravenu, so Ra Ravenu Gopala, Venu Gopapala, right? So the man who's playing the flute and inviting the Gopikas. Now, that is a concept of mythology, right?
That is
Again,
true.
Mythological and slightly emotionally complex.
Yes,
right?
for a
How
kid.
the Gopikas are dancing around Krishna is not just a dance, right? He's denoting equality of love and affection. There is a divine mythological symbolism to the Rasalila. I mean, all of that goes into some other thing. Now, again, at 4 and 5, other than understanding it as Patima stories, what do you actually understand that to be, right? So we think these are children's songs. They're not children's songs, right?
That is true.
Right? They're
But
not.
so-
Just
so-
because it's
so-
easier to render. So what has happened is because it's easier to render. See, if I were to sing Kana Kankoti Vendum Kapali Inbavani Kana. See, that's slightly more complicated, right? So therefore, we are not giving it to a child. Whereas we think that this is straight notes, it's easier. Without realizing, right, the musical, structural, mythological, emotional complexity involved in that composition. So you have to be very careful, right, about how a lot of that application can be put into the classroom.
That's
Right?
true. But what challenges did you face? I mean, to see you touched probably what 4 lakh children, 5 lakh children through the
5 lakh
Rhapsody.
children. Lots of challenges, Murli, because this kind of understanding, I mean, trying to explain this nuance to a
Yeah,
lot of people is tough because, see, and you're going, against the grain. Right? You're telling people
yeah,
don't use Varavina as a children's song,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You can use it, but use it probably around the third or fourth grade. Don't use it in kindergarten, right? And
Correct,
in
correct.
a classroom, and that is one. But also explaining to people things like neurocognition, it's not that easy, right? So please understand that we are also a culture, despite having, millennia of musical heritage, right? We have reduced music to an extracurricular form to be used as a competitive edge to win competitions and put on your resume. We are not looking at it actually as a learning form, right?
And
Think
also
about it.
something that can
Everybody,
enhance,
yeah.
and also something that can enhance the, as you
We are
said,
not thinking
cognition
that
or
way, right? We are
yeah, yeah,
only
yeah.
looking at performance. How many people are learning music just for the love of music?
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Everywhere you notice this bias, right? That அரங்கேற்றம் பண்ணணும், performance கொடுக்கணும். So it's all
Correct.
going towards, performative ways of, which is, I've said this to many people. You learn physical education. You go through PT class in school not because you want to become Virat Kohli. You go to physical education class for physical fitness. Similarly,
Yes,
you're learning mathematics because mathematical acuity is at the basis of every other field you will approach, whether it's the
that's
sciences
true.
or the social sciences or engineering or whatever, medicine,
Yeah,
you're going to need mathematics, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
we cannot put an expectation on a child that just by learning mathematics, nalike you should become Bertrand Russell, right? That's
That is
not
true.
the. But music alone, if you notice, you give the child only that which is needed to put him on stage. Now, how many
That's true.
children actually want to go on stage? If you notice, it will only be a proportion, right? So
So I think
it's these.
there's a strong message out here for I think parents and also kids learning music that I think the process of learning and enjoying the learning is more important than the end goal. Is that right?
Definitely, and music is making you more intelligent. I think I will put it this way: music is the victory. The fact that you're learning music means that you're already getting a Bon Vita boost to your intelligence, and that's the reward. I mean, anything more, if you're getting awards and rewards and performances, that's an extra, that's a bonus. Don't go with that expectation. Learn music because music by itself is your biggest achievement, right? It's already made you a better human being, right? It's given you more intelligence. It's made your brain synthesize much faster than other people can. That's
That's
it.
true.
That's
That's
your
true.
reward.
That's true. Now we'll just move a little bit to the memory aspect of music. You know, this is where I in fact asked you a question earlier whether that was looping because I don't understand looping in terms of music that well, but I do understand from the neurocognitive side of things that looping is something where you remember something from your past, so a memory can loop, right? Habits are nothing but looping. As a doctor, I know that whatever we perceive in the world and how consciousness is built is again based on looping because we are funneling all the inputs into something small and then we are looping it. But when it comes to music, again, one of the famous books on this is by Douglas Hofstadter on it's called
Yeah.
Godel Escher Bach, and he speaks a lot about Bach and his looping and how it's very important. Can you just explain to our viewers as to what looping means in music and give us a few examples from Western classical and also our great I would say the South Indian composers in film music such as Sri Ilayaraja and Rahmanji, how they use looping in and how it makes music sound to us.
So the ability to, take a pattern and juxtapose it on itself or, as a repeated motif, right? Both as a jog to memory, but also in terms of binding structure. So think of it like this, that if I take a window as a theme, right? So if you take a building, the theme of a window will keep recurring throughout that building, right? The same pattern of windows. So if you look at the ground floor, first floor, second floor, if you know
Yeah,
the pattern for the ground floor, it will again repeat in the first floor, it will again repeat in the second floor, right? That's a very easy way to understand, right? So similarly, musically, it abounds in such examples, right? So Bach premises this entire idea of counterpoint techniques on point, counterpoint. So if I take a pattern, sorry. Same pattern in the left hand. If I play it together, but what Bach does is he starts the right hand first and then gives it a small pause and then starts the left hand. So you are looping right hand onto the left. So what happens is, so left hand is finishing a little slower. I'll play it again.
Wow.
Right? Pattern on pattern. Right?
Yeah.
So, and there are entire pieces like that, right? So this is part of a larger piece that goes that way. So all these are each of these pieces is pattern upon pattern upon pattern upon pattern, right? So right hand start pandra pattern, then left hand will repeat it, then left hand will start a pattern which then the right hand repeats. So it's loops into loops into loops, right?
Okay.
And despite it being composed like that, when you're bringing it together, it's creating harmony. Instead of being just a set of random notes thrown at each other like carom coins, it's creating harmony, right? And that's the beauty of Bach. It's same thing in, if you were to take this pattern, okay? This is the pattern, 2 notes. Constant loop.
Yeah.
And look at what Ilayaraja does. From the background music from the song Paruvami, right? From Nenjathai Killade, and it's just these 2 notes. It's just pattern of these 2 notes, but he derives so much from same thing, just 2 note loop, pattern upon pattern upon pattern upon pattern of juxtaposition that he has done, right? Many compositions like this. Ilayaraja, you take anything, right? He has taken 2 loops. So one is the melody loop. Second melody loop is put them both together. This is what he has done, right? Again, point, counterpoint, right? Like Bach, putting together and yet creating harmony. Loop, loop, right? Throughout the composition, it will keep repeating. And see, what the brain does is the brain has subconsciously processed the loop. You don't know it, but the brain is automatically, it's like saying, I've given you Greek yogurt, you've already consumed the sugar in it. Okay, you
Yeah,
don't know that
that's
you consume sugar, but you've already consumed the sugar. So what's happening is, because that predictability of pattern has already been set into your brain is automatically activated to notice only when the pattern comes. You don't even know it, but you're attending to it. And because of that, again, remember the example of jumping into a cold pool on a hot summer's day. Your brain is just rejoicing because it's recognizing this pattern. Nothing pleases the brain more than to be able to have the illusion of control, that it knows what the pattern of something is, right? When the brain knows a pattern, you're a doctor, if you know exactly what you are treating,
yes,
right, it is a
yes,
eureka moment for you. You know the pattern. You see a certain, if you are a virologist, you will know this. If you see a certain pattern, you know this is the virus, right? So, and this, imagine at the level of the subconscious, that you're like, sometimes when you're an anesthesiologist, so sometimes your hands are automatically doing certain things, you don't even have
that's
to
true.
attend to it, right?
That's
Same
true.
thing, the brain is automatically attending to it, and that's what looping does. It provides the brain with a structure which it knows how to predict.
And is there anything else that you can extrapolate philosophically from the looping? Now, when it comes to improving somebody's life, like habits or any rituals or anything that somebody can actually put it into their life, anything that can
I
be
think
extrapolated?
I think the simple extrapolation is, if you cannot learn music, it's never too late to learn instrumental music, especially. Keep listening to instrumental music every day and make it a routine, right?
Okay.
Do it when you're doing something particularly difficult for you, right? Do it during surgery. Listen to music when you're, dealing with a difficult work situation. Trust me when I say that it automatically, because it keeps massaging the brain with the illusion of control, that it automatically is, and chemically it is improving the brain's ability to handle chaos, handle lack of structure, and handle problems. It's automatically improving it. And if you make it a pattern, right, if you create your own loop,
Yeah.
right, of listening
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
music at particular times every day,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
doesn't only have to be at bedtime and walking and jogging. It can be even during very, I'm sure you know this, doctor. So many doctors are listening to music when they're performing
No, no,
surgery.
no, no.
Right? So
I work with a couple of surgeons who listen to more or less the same playlists. So I think, as you said, it helps in.
that's it. That's the extrapolation.
That's great. And you have been a pioneer in bringing a Western instrument such as piano to Carnatic classical. Now, the challenges there and rewards. What would you like to say about that?
Every challenge was the reward. That's what I'd like to say, because every challenge was forcing me to also think of better ways of adaptation.
Yeah,
Because the only way you can answer critics is by your work. There's no point in verbally arguing with anybody, and see, my truth is my truth, your truth is going to be your truth always,
that
right?
is
If I
true.
try to
That is
force
true.
my opinion on you, or you try to force your opinion on me, is
Yeah,
when the problems begin. And most things that people throw as criticism at you are usually more man-made perceptions of things. They're not what is natural to the music. People are not commenting on the music. They're still getting stuck on piano. How can it come in this? Because we have Kamakase. See, that's a
yes,
very superficial construct, right? That's just
yeah,
saying this is what it's like saying, how can you wear a green shirt to surgery when you're supposed to wear only a blue shirt? It's getting
yeah,
stuck at
yeah,
something very superficial,
yeah.
right?
But
And
when
rather
did the
than
shift?
answer it,
When did the shift happen?
I
I know
still
that
think
you've
the
been
shift has not happened. I still think. But okay, I mean, to not be too funny about it, I think the challenge only drove me to experiment more and more in terms of format and what cannot be done. For example, with Guru Charan, I started working out ways of being able to we created a Ragam Tanam Pallavi structure, both Guru Charan, Jayanti Kumaresh. In fact, Ravi Kiran is who started this off for me, and we did a Samendra Matimam Ragam Tanam Pallavi. It's very intensive with him as a recording, and we
okay,
did this about almost 20 years ago. And
okay,
where we said, how can we combine? So, Jayanti and I, when we play, we're playing Ragam Tanam Pallavi, there's no compromise with the Ragam at all. She is able to complement in the Meend or the Gamaka
Veena.
sections, I'm able to complement in certain rhythmic sections, etc. So, how do you find that balance? So, I think all these challenges have only been opportunities to take this further and further, Doctor. And see, at the end of the day, if the audience to this music is going to be one, namely only myself, right? I still think it's a great thing for me to do.
Can you just play a good Carnatic classical piece that you love to play?
This is a
that I
keyboard,
get.
not even a piano, but still.
That was wonderful. It's a very famous composition, as I'm sure many of the Carnatic classical rasikas will understand. And if I'm not mistaken, that is Kapi, right?
It is Kapi and it's Ennathavam and
Enatham, excellent.
it's played on a keyboard, not really a piano, but yes, it gives you a flavor. So
regarding wrong note and music, right? Musicians always tell there is nothing like a wrong note. It is just a wrong context, right? So you're actually singing something wrong in the context of a raga or a piece. So similarly in life, if you were to take mistakes, right? Many times, what we say or what we do is probably in the wrong context. Now, as a musician, as a person who has been an educationist and a social entrepreneur, how do you learn to embrace mistakes? And how has being a musician taught you this?
I think there is no such thing as a mistake, Dr. Murali.
That's what I said. It's the wrong context. Whatever,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not counting people who willfully do bad things to other people, but I'm saying that willfully doing bad things is a different discussion. But I'm saying there's no such thing as a mistake. It's just, as you said, it's a right it may be the right words with the wrong context, sometimes the wrong words, but in the right context, etc. I think I'll put it this way. This may sound even more philosophical. Maybe I should call myself Sri Anilananda for saying what I'm about to say. But I think that it all has to start with self-acceptance, right? That we are not perfect and we are only striving. Every one of us is striving at some level to find, I'll put it this way, what music has taught me is you have to find your sajjam, right? Every note will every composition finds a resolution, right? Any composition you take will have to, it has to find the sajjam somewhere, right? And we are striving to find our center. We are striving to find our truth, right? And in that journey, it's a journey into yourself, right? Your life is a journey into yourself. The day you realize that you are enough, right? Whatever you are, with all your imperfections, your problems, your limitations, you are enough. You have every right to be a citizen of this world as anybody else, and you are enough. You don't have to prove anything. You don't need certificates in your walls. You don't need likes, shares, subscribes. You don't need any of these things. You're perfect the way you are. And that realization is a journey. Let's say that realization is your Satchavam. You are taking a journey towards that through the various alapanas you're doing throughout the composition, right? So in that, some notes might strike a slightly jarring note, some notes might be more suswara, some notes will be avaswara, it doesn't matter. Point is, it all evens out in the end and you will find your center. And as long as you accept that that is making my melody richer, right, you're fine, right? The people who are on purpose singing out of tune, as I said, I'm not commenting on them, but I'm saying that
If you're striving,
and
yeah,
I think this, we have, as a culture, unfortunately, we compare automatically, right? And the comparison starts, especially in an ecosystem, a country like India, comparison is automated, right? Because you're always in a class of 40, 45 students, you have to be first. We all have
that's
to be
true.
toppers. You have to get gold
Yeah,
medals. We have to win.
yeah,
You have to get the prestigious scholarship. And you're all the time being put on test, right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
how much of the time in your childhood and you're growing have you even taken to stop, pause, and say, but you're fine? Because you're never allowed to feel fine. The moment you say I feel fine, they will say, oh, but you're not good at something else, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
because of that, we have started becoming categorical in our judgments of ourselves, right? This is the correct thing, that is the incorrect thing. This is success, that is failure. There is no binary. Who is to say what is successful, what is not successful, right? So the point is, and music teaches you that, right? That there is no, this is not correct formula, right? Carnatic music, especially, if I were to do the I could play it as, or I could play, or I could do. So many ways of approaching the same phrase. Each phrase has got its own beauty, right? I don't have
That's
to.
true.
In fact, that is one of the big joys of Carnatic music. You can keep on improvising, right? And what is life if not one big improvisation, right? We are also learning by improvising every day, right?
That's
Dr.
true.
Murali can get completely well prepared, set out on a journey, and there'll be a pothole in the road that was not there yesterday. What's he going to do, right? Or he may come to the hospital and the power goes out and emergency backup is also not functioning. What's he going to do, right?
Yeah,
Every day we are improvising, right?
that's true. That's true. That's true.
So that's
Wonderfully
that's the
said.
way I've taken it.
Now, you seem to have found your Shadjam, as you said, right? We were kind of
Approaching
married
Shadjam
the,
is what I would
yeah,
put.
approaching. Yeah, you were always approaching Shadjam. Yeah. So I see that trophy behind, in the on the wall, and I earlier asked you about it, and you did mention that it was given for some of the charity work that you've done. Can you just highlight a little bit about the charity work you do? Is the reason?
So all in 2022, I made a decision to contribute everything that I'm earning in music through music to charity. It's a public announcement I made, and it's nothing. I'm not a great person or anything. It's just that I've always felt that music itself was a blessing. I told you I started this interview by saying that I look at myself as an incidental performer. Or even accidental. So I just felt that everything that has come from a force above me should go back to that force above me. That's it. That's my truth. Having said that, that particular trophy it's called the Champion of Chennai, and it was given to me for having been very active during the Chennai floods of 2015. And apart from volunteering a lot, I volunteer a lot, but apart from that, I raised money through music. Some funds to be able to rebuild a school that had gotten lost in the floods, which was given back to
Wonderful.
the city of Chennai. And the city of Chennai and the KSA Trust gave this to me. But I mean, I'm a patron trustee of a blind home in Chennai. It's called Nyan
Okay.
Darshan. And
Okay.
every year I play this concert called Concert in the Dark, where I blindfold myself and put the audience also into the dark to experience what blindness feels like for the concert duration. And that's become a popular concept, and that also raises money for that particular home. So, I mean, I've tried to bring in music, doctor, into every one of the charitable causes that I support, and in interesting ways. So that, in fact, I should mention the late great SPB in this context, who I also played with quite a bit. And SPV actually has a charitable association also, which is doing a tremendous amount of charity work. In fact, when I helped rebuild this school along with Rotary Club of Madras and several other organizations which came forward to help, SPB gave funds spontaneously for the school as well. And so that is a part of my life which has also made me um, brought for me some other people into my life who became very close friends, right? So, whom we work very closely together on multiple causes like that. As you know, even Rhapsody has a charitable foundation. We've got the Rhapsody Music Foundation, which does all the lessons that we do for private schools are done for government-run and corporation schools also free of cost. So that's always been a side-by-side part of what I do. I think
Wonderful.
when I find my Sajjam, I think all of what I do will be for charity. I think I am blessed with two great things in my life, Dr. Murli. I don't have biological children. Other people don't think of it as a blessing. I think of it as a blessing because it's allowing me to channelize a lot of my work, my output, my resources into helping everybody else's children. That's the way I look at it.
And love, of course.
Unbounded, right? Because it is going in every
Unbound, yeah.
direction. And
Yeah.
and I think when I find my Sajjamam, it also means that I have materially provided for myself adequately enough that I don't have to depend upon anything. That after that, I think everybody's life, you should realize your in economics terms, your point of diminishing marginal returns, right? So
That's true.
when you reach your point of inflection, you must say that after this it's only diminishing marginal returns or utility, and in fact it's better to give it away.
That's
So,
what they say. After $70,000, a US citizen happiness is probably on the diminishing marginal return curve. So I
and
think
and
that
I'm not mandating a number like that for anybody, but I'm just saying that you have to realize when enough is enough, right? And
that's true.
and I think that really helps you in finding your sajjam, as I say.
That's wonderful. And I think you also have another foundation, or you work with another foundation where you partner the children with some top teachers across the world. Can you just
So
tell a little bit
that's a
about that?
company. That's a company, Dr. Murli. That's not a
Okay.
foundation. That's
Okay.
for profit. It's called Crew, and
Okay.
that simple idea that when you're in middle school to high school is when you're beginning to think about, what you want to do with your life, and it's a way
Yeah.
to find your purpose by
Okay.
actually indulging in real world projects. With the help of professors and institutions across the world. So, if I do practical, real world problem solving projects, I
Yeah.
pick up skills, but I also figure out whether these are paths I want to go, because increasingly the 21st century, our children are going to be getting different pathways to them compared to what we
That's
had.
true.
And
That's
you
true.
must open up that discovery. You don't want to restrict them by saying that going to IIT or going to medicine are the only two options. There's so many more things that they can
That's
do.
true.
So opening up the pathways, that by itself has reached quite a lot, about 14 countries now, and 500,000 students of its own.
So we will go for a little bit rapid fire before we get on to some of the, I would say, uh, controversial topics of the day when it comes to music and technology. So just a little bit of, let's get back to music. A piece that you fondly remember from childhood that takes you back to probably a 4 or 5 year old. Because I've got some songs from the, when it used to be played at home. Yes, for people who probably do not recognize, that's a very popular, I think, song that is taught to children, Shakti Sahita Ganapatim. So that was wonderful. The next rapid fire thing I would like to ask is, you are stranded on a desert island. I wouldn't say desert island, a nice tropical island like Castaway and Tom Hanks, but now you have a piano with you and a solar powered music player, and you can choose 3 pieces of music to be on this music player. What would you choose?
Okay. First one. So Manasa Sancharare will be my first one. The second one will probably be this one, very, very close to my heart, is it's Varuvaro Varam Taruvaro. That will be second. And the third,
Which ragam is that, if I'm not...
Sama. Yeah. Same Manasa Sancharare, rendume Sama.
yeah.
And the third one would be this. Kurai Ondrumille. I can't think of anything more appropriate or more liberating than being stranded anywhere and having no other responsibility other than just playing music.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, as I said, we will move on to something, I would say controversial, but something that's quite up in the debate right now as to artificial intelligence and music, right? So we have been having artificial intelligence creating wonderful paintings, videos and music. Now, when the creation of music becomes something, I wouldn't call it democratized, but beyond the control of just talented musicians, where do you see the world going?
See, AI right now is at a stage where it's basically modeling something basis past data. What it's doing is taking past data and then doing certain structural formulations based on that, just like how a ChatGPT or a Claude AI works on taking and synthesizing a lot of text and then producing. What it's doing is replicating structures that already exist, right?
That's true.
So the first and foremost is that new structures constantly are being created by human beings, and LLMs are going to exist side by side, which will take the new structures and keep synthesizing. So think of AI as something that will be there. It's going to continue producing it. It's not going to replace musicians. Having said that, if you're not an inventive or a creatively intelligent musician, you're probably going to face a lot of trouble going into the future. Meaning that if you're a composer or a music creator of any form, you'll have to constantly look for new patterns that can outwit AI. I think that's the way to put it, right? If you're going to be doing predictable patterns, then AI can probably produce a version which is better than what you create. So I think that's going to be the order of the day. Having said that, it's not as prevalent yet, Doctor. I think we've got a good way to go before AI becomes that sophisticated that it will supplant human interference. So I think we have a ways to go with that. But yes, I think, see, one of the biggest investments of my life is this topic called creative intelligence, right? So I'm a big believer in the fact that what education itself needs to, what new education design itself needs to be is how can I make human beings more creative, right? So what does that mean? Not just creative in producing music, but artistically creative, but also cognitively creative, right? How do we make better doctors? How do we make better scientists? How do we make better, logical thinkers, right? And that requires a lot of creative leaps to be made as well. I mean, why is it that the greatest inventions in, say, chemistry was in, say, the 19th or 20th century, but we're not finding that kind of, we're finding derivative
big leaps,
but not at that level. So I think we need to invest in modular education in such a way that it can enhance creative intelligence. Same thing applies to musicians. You have to become a lot more creative about how you're receiving data, synthesizing data, and how you're able to produce new patterns that don't exist, such that AI will take some time to catch up with you. That's going to be my answer.
That's I think a good message to young musicians out there, and who are kind of making use of their talent to kind of start becoming more creative. What about making a positive impact on the world?
I think
Musicians,
each
what would
of
you like to say, young musicians who are starting off?
I think musicians should basically, I will say Mandolin Srinivas's message, right? Practice panyacha, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
you have to keep working hard till you find your sound. Find something that's unique that you are contributing, which is faster than AI. But
yeah.
find your sound, which is unique to you, and then love yourself. Accept yourself
Excellent,
and love yourself, right? Like if you are a
wonderful.
happy human being, you're contributing to the world, right?
That's
What the
true.
world does
That's
not
true.
want is more unhappy people who begin
Yeah.
to play with nuclear weapons, right? What we need is we need happy people who can keep
Yeah.
contributing. Happiness is all about within. You need to look at yourself and say, I love you and I accept you. That's enough. You are enough. If you are able to say it, you're already contributing positively to this world. You don't need anything more.
Now, wearing the educator hat, what would you like to say to the educationists or educators out there on how to incorporate music into their classrooms?
I think that I've spoken about enough, and
Yes.
Rhapsody is the best resource in my opinion. Uh,
Yeah.
but
And
even to educators, I've got three very powerful things to tell them. One, all educators need to love themselves. All educators need to accept themselves, right? Accepting yourself and loving yourself doesn't mean you become conceited. It means that you see your limitations for what they are, but you also see your strengths for what they are. And you tell yourself that you are enough and you have enough of an agency and a power in you to be able to bring about positive change. And the third thing I will say is please identify where your inflection point of diminishing marginal returns will come, right?
yeah,
There
yeah.
is only so much you can do. Please, when you reach that point, realize that that is the happiest you'll ever be, and then start contributing, gifting freely of your knowledge and your experience to other people. Every day, ask yourself, who can I help today, as opposed to what can the world do for me today, right? I
Yeah,
think if
yeah.
you start changing the orientation of that question, education will flourish.
Thank you. I think that was a very powerful message to end the conversation. Now, it's my request that you finish the conversation that we had with the piece which kind of coincides or kind of maps the last idea that you spoke about.
Okay, I'll try, but
Thank you. What a positive and patriotic note to end the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's been an enlightening, musical, philosophical conversation. Thank you, Mr. Anil Srinivasan. The last 90 minutes or so, we have gone through how you started your childhood with roots of Carnatic classical, then moved on to the Western classical, and of course, the groundbreaking work that you're doing with Rhapsody Foundation, the charity work that you're doing, and the philosophy behind it. I mean to say that was wonderful. And it just reminds us that the music journey that you had has transcended boundaries. And it has made you a person which I think the society should treasure. And the power to transform lives is what you actually highlighted. And the insights from a life well lived, as our tagline goes, has been very much true in this conversation. So thank you very much for sharing your wisdom and
Thank you.
definitely definitely the passion in your life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much.
So to all our listeners, I am sure you've been inspired by how a transformative power the music can have in communities. So kindly listen to what Mr. Anil Srinivasan had to say about having music as a part of life, music in education, seeking out cross-cultural collaborations, and remember that even the simplest melody can create a profound change. Thank you very much.